Dámy a pánové, dobrý den. Vítám vás na historicky první akci brněnské Google User Group. Moje jméno je Dan Franc, komunikovali jsme spolu mailem. Jsem zakladatel a jedním z organizátorů GUG.cz jako celku. Zároveň mám zde Toma Obšívače z Fakulty informatiky, který je jedním z lídrů právě brněnské GUG.cz. Velice vítám kolegy z Google, Arneho a Ernsta, oni se vám za chvilku představí sami s tím, co přinesli. Já proto jenom možná pár slov na začátek, tím, že je to první akce. Zeptám se, kdo jste znal GUG ještě před dnešní akcí? Viděl jste někdo o nás? Skvělý, pár rukou se zvedlo. Byla to aktivita po hříchu pragocentrická, jsem velmi rád, že Tom a další lidi se chopili toho, aby začaly vznikat ty aktivity jinde. Znáte možná naši webovou stránku, v podstatě čím se zabýváme, je podpora vývojářům a uživatelům v tom, aby se jim s aplikacemi Google žili lépe, nicméně zabýváme se i vším možným týkající se internetu. Google říká, internet je naše platforma, takže i my tak podobně děláme akce, které se rozhodně týkají i jiných technologií a služeb, než je přímo Google. Děláme různé přednášky, najdete diskuzní fóra, články, na kterých přinášíme nejrůznější návody a náměty jak pro vývojáře, tak pro uživatele a zejména akce. Fungujeme už nějakým 3. rokem. V Brně bych lehce uvodil, že už máme naplánováno pár zhruba dalších věcí, takže poté, co dneska proběhne dnešní akce, které řeknu za chviličku, tak se můžete těšit do léta minimálně na 2 akce, které pořádáme s Red Hatem. Vím, že zde někteří z Red Hatu jste. Bude jedna přednáška věnovaná Javě, jedna bude věnovaná open source jako takovému. Zároveň příští měsíc zřejmě proběhne přednáška věnovaná sociálním sítím, síťováním a zase jak to uchopit technologicky a zároveň, aby to k něčemu bylo. Nicméně jsme otevření všem možným námětům a podnětům, zároveň naše brněnská skupina je v tuhletu chvíli i velmi otevřená těm z vás, kteří byste se chtěli zapojit, pomoci plánovat to, co vlastně by zajímalo lidi jako vy zde v Brně, co bychom mohli udělat. Těch možností je celá řada, takže chci říct, pokud byste někdo se chtěl k nám přidat, je to aktivita spíše zábavná, neobnáší to skoro žádnou práci, rozhodně vítáme další lidi do brněnské GUG skupiny. Chtěl bych ještě pozvat na jednu akci, kterou budeme vyhlašovat zhruba tento týden. Jedná se o akci, kterou jsme pomenovali GUG Camp. Je to akce, která navazuje na Google Developer Day, kde jsme dělali akci, které jsme říkali vývojářská výkladní skříň, která byla o tom, že jste vlastně vy přišli na pódium a ukázali krátce v nějakých 5-10 minutách, co děláte, co jste vyrobili. Ta akce měla velký úspěch, takže jsme si ji rozhodli udělat úplně jako samostatnou aktivitu, nečekat na další Developer Day. Proběhne to na naší skupině ČZU v Praze a bude to 34. Každopádně ta informace, tuším, už je k dispozici na naší titulní stránce. Takže kdokoliv z vás bude mít cokoliv ukázání, přijďte, bude se tam soutěžit i o mobil za nejlepší prezentaci večera. Porota je poměrně exkluzivní, jak uvidíte, přineseme informace více. No, teď už k dnešku. Vše vám řeknou kolegové, ta část první, zhruba přednášková, potrvá zhruba 1.5 hodiny. Okay, let me switch to English, because I'm moving to talking about our lecture. So it will be all in English, of course. Arne promised that he will speak not as fast as Stephanie. Some of you met her on Google Developer Day. She talks really fast. So hopefully it will be okay. The first part of our lecture today is 1.5 hours, where Ernst and Arne will share some of the news in HTML5 and in Chrome. Then we'll probably take a little bit of break, in which you can take the coffee, the sweets, the fruits, and everything. And then the hackathon will start. And the hackathon will be an opportunity for you to use what the guys here will show you to create something around Google extensions that will maybe work. And if that works, I also want to invite you to submit it to our competition, which ends on the last day of March. The competition is about the best Chrome extension. Again, if you look at our website, there is lots of prizes. There are some cell phones, some goodies. The biggest prize, though, is the trip to California to Google I/O conference. We all at GUG are pretty sorry that we cannot participate. Half of us would love to go there. We can't. but Czech Google said, hey, guys from GUG, you can't, but the winner of your competition will go there. So thanks to GUG and Google, some of you will have the opportunity to go there. So I want to invite you, even if you create something today, just go ahead, submit it to our competition, and maybe if not the trip to the US, you can win some of the other awards. Some of the technical things, feel free to tweet. I suggest that you use this hashtag for whoever of you will be online. This is the Twitter account for Arne's team, and I guess he will share a little bit later. As for some technical details, Tom Obšívač, Tom, do you have any comments? Okay, so remember the face of this guy. If you have any questions, concerns, comments about the logistics of today, talk to him. He'll be somewhere around. I will have to leave because I teach today at VUT Brno, unfortunately, so after about half an hour I have to come back to my students. But I'm not important here. It's about you guys. So let me switch the microphone and... Oh, let me, one more thing. You might notice GUG.cz, if some of you knows that. It's a pretty cool shop. They are sponsoring us today with some T-shirts. And the T-shirts will be given to the winners of the extensions today. So it will be up to Arne and Ernst to determine what extension they like the best. And 3 of you will take home not just the stickers, but the Bazinga T-shirt. Okay. So... Yeah, Arne got one. Yeah, you know, we knew that he would love the T-shirt so much that we have to give him one of the Bazinga T-shirts. So see, he's switching from Google to Bazinga maybe sometimes. Okay. So let me keep the microphone here. Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for coming to visit us, too. This is awesome. I love being able to come out and talk to developers, and hopefully at the end of today, we'll all have written some Chrome extensions. Before then, we'll do a very short bit about some of the cool stuff that Chrome can do. Just, for my curiosity and for the curiosity of everybody, can I see who uses Chrome, like, every now and then or all the time? Yeah. Awesome. So a lot of you then probably know that Chrome is very fast, and it's nice and stable. It updates often, so it doesn't have very many security holes, that kind of thing. But maybe what you don't know is that Chrome supports some of the coolest HTML features that are coming out today. And the reason it does that is because we have a team working on just adding new HTML5 stuff. So Ernest is going to present for a little bit about what kind of cool HTML5 stuff can webmasters use today that Chrome supports. And we want you all, when you start writing your own websites, to use this stuff, especially if you write a mobile site and that kind of thing. And then after we do that, then I'm going to show you how you can use that HTML5 technology to write a Chrome extension. And then after that short introduction, we'll do a hackathon, and I'll actually walk you through a Chrome extension tutorial. I think that's about it. Oh, we're from Google's developer relations team. We kind of travel around and talk about Chrome. So if you have any questions, again, we're on this Twitter account. If you just reply us or message us, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have afterwards too. So.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, can you hear me well? Yeah. I'd like to know how many people... A little bit higher. Let's see. Here? Low? Okay. How many people here are students? Okay. Some people here from companies, I guess, or freelance, in your case?
They just snuck in.
Okay. They just walked by. So I'm going to show you
Your presentation.
Yeah. I'm going to show you some things about HTML5. Hope is this address. Yeah, perfect. This presentation is meant to show in detail some of the features, but I'm going to skip those that are not interesting for us today because I'm going to focus on those that you can use afterwards on the extensions. So I don't know if you guys heard about this term of HTML5. They've been standardizing all the new features, both in HTML and JavaScript APIs for the last maybe 2 years now.
Yeah.
And it's, as the title says here, it's taking web development to the next level to make it less difficult, more fun. A little bit of timeline, but not important here, just to see how old is HTML4, 1997. So obviously we needed something for the new web applications. And also when we use the term HTML5 here, we're being kind of generic, including also those new features of CSS, CSS3. So don't take much into account if a feature is in the spec or not, because it may be in a draft stage or something like that. So the interesting part here is to show the cool thing that's coming, that all browsers are starting to support, and obviously here what Chrome supports as well. One thing that, I don't know if your level of JavaScript programming, but obviously if you work as web developer or done some work on web stuff, I'm sure you are familiar with this syntax. And when you select elements, you have some methods, but many times you use JavaScript libraries for features that you don't have available by default. Now, Chrome incorporates some things, some selectors that the spec is also including, like get elements by class name. That's a selector that we had to do workarounds or use a library to use before. Now it's natively implemented in the browser and with better performance. And also, if we want to select elements with CSS notation, we can use this method to query selector and get the elements the same way. So you'll be using that a lot, and just to be aware that you have these new methods to use. And this feature is really used a lot in extensions. When you want to store something in local, cookies have a limitation in the size of the information that they can save, and also they are sent in every request when you are communicating with the server. In this case, with local storage, we have a variable, and through the key-value pair, we can store a lot of information. And here one example is when you are typing an email, and then it's getting saved as you type, and without sending that to the server. Chrome has a debugger. Let me see if I can remember the shortcut. And I'll use that to show you how this thing gets stored in local. So I think this is the line. No, this is the line we're using here for this example. These slides, just not to be confused, it's like an HTML. It's not a PowerPoint or anything like that. It's an HTML page built in HTML with HTML5 features. So that's why it allows us to store information on the local site. Local storage, we have local storage as a variable. If we want that information to be persistent, we can close the browser, open it, and we still have it there. Our session storage, if we want that information to be only per specific tab. This is also used in extensions because we have now SQL syntax used on the client side. I'm sure you all have used that on the server side with PHP or any server-side language. So now this snippet here is JavaScript. So the same way that we saw the storage on the browser, this is the debugger that we have in Chrome. If we go to this line here, we can see like a database with all all the items that we store. And in this case, these 3 items is this online demo of a to-do list that we can add anything here and then make a new item. And we'll have it stored in the, as a 4th item here. So very useful when still store information on the client side. The following ones is more oriented for offline storage, and I'm not going to get into detail here. Think only about a mobile browser where you can you are offline in a plane or any other place, and you want to store part of that application on the client side. So when you go offline, your application is still functional, and then when you go back online, you synchronize that data that you have been modifying. Just a couple of HTML attributes and some logic also of the. There's a list on the server side of the files that you want to store, but I'm not going to get much into detail here, just because probably we're not going to use it today for extensions. This part we're not going to use that either unless you want to do some very heavy computational process. Think of JavaScript as single-threaded process. So when we have something very difficult to compute, like calculating prime numbers or things like that, the UI can get stuck in the browser itself because of that process. So here we have a method to create a new worker, which will create a process in parallel. So the main thread, it's not affected by that heavy computational process. WebSockets. It's kind of, I don't know if you heard about Comet. It was an attempt to do Ajax communication, but the other way around, like pushing data from the server. Use case for that, it's a chat where you see the other user typing in real time the characters. So there's a notation in JavaScript to create also communication with the server and send messages back and forth with on message, post message as well, and some listeners. So, but again, it's something that we're not going to use today, so I'm going to skip that part. Notifications, that might be useful in case that you want to show notifications at desktop level. Let's see. I don't know if it will work here because we changed the resolution with the projector, but I'm going to try. Okay. So this window is independent from the browser. I mean, if I resize now the browser, I'll still have it at that level. Let me see. Well, yeah. So, yeah, it's outside of the browser itself. So it's just to mimic more the desktop experience, having notifications at this desktop level. So here the demo is only showing the last tweet from this Twitter account. And we do all of that from JavaScript. So imagine that you have an extension that is showing the last email notifications or any calendar or anything like that. But instead of having the user to be in a specific tab of our website, once we set this notification, this user can be at any tab or anything in his desktop, and he'll see the notifications in one of the corners. So again, it's just an experimental notation because it's one of the most recent APIs that we have. And we called webNotifications.create notification with some parameters. In this case, we were using the Twitter data, like picture, title, and text, and then it's showing that notification right away. I don't know if you guys used drag and drop using some specific JavaScript library. The only thing that it's new here in HTML5 that the API is much more simple. You don't have to be much worried about the mouse position and things like that. It's really simple, and then the listeners as well. Here, what we're demoing is when we drag an image, the data that it's being dragged. When we drag a text, also we're setting some data that through some methods we can overwrite. For instance, here, instead of this is the content we drop. When we drag this second text here, we're overwriting the content with this method just saying that event data transfer set data, whatever we want. But in short, here is that what they are attempting is to do drag and drop easier instead of being a pain for the web developer. So just probably you want to use that in your extension. For geolocation, something also more oriented for mobile browsers, but maybe your application wants also to show something about your location, even if you're in a laptop or desktop. So what we are seeing here, let me see if that works. No, maybe not. But what we're doing here is through some methods, it's asking for permission to the user, and when the user grants permission, it shows a map with your position at the. But you're in the script, right? Before. I thought you were on the script. Well, it doesn't matter. So we can skip it. But this method gets the current position with the coordinates, and then you can pass that to Google Maps, like in these 2 lines, and then show your position in Google Maps. That's a very quick overview of the JavaScript APIs that are supported and included now in the HTML5 spec. Again, some of them are in the spec itself. Some of them have their own draft for now. But the interesting thing is that you can use them in Chrome and then at the end in your extensions as well. So also the second section is about HTML5. I'm going to skip also most of it only because it's not really interesting for us, at least for the extensions. But just keep in mind that when you are building your application or site, you might want to take these things into account, mainly because these things are for semantics, don't change the functionality or the aspect of the application, but the semantics to make it more machine readable or for search engines to find the information on your website easily. So there are new tags for your HTML, like section, header, footer, and things that are very common in your application. Also, there are some attributes for links to make links more semantic. I'm going to skip that now, but you can check it later. Microdata, like the same way that microformats was trying to do some to add some semantics to data to items, now is standardized through some attributes. I'm going to skip that as well. And area attributes, it's also for screen readers for accessibility reasons. So the content that you put in your HTML is readable for screen readers. Then you might want to use these ones. This might be more interesting for you. These are new form field types. Instead of being like a text box where you put a number, here we set this slider, which will represent the values between 0 and 50. So the only thing that we change is that instead of type text, we're putting type range, and the browser renders this thing automatically for us. Same way here, if we put type search, and then as we type any word, we have some extra functionality like clearing the field. Maybe you've seen that in mobile browsers. Also, the attribute for placeholder in case that we want a default text. I used to do that with JavaScript, but now it's automatically done when we delete the... Whoops. 1 second. I screwed up. Okay. When we delete the word, then the text comes back, and the browser does that automatically for us. And some others that are going to be supported soon, like color selector or date selector, as you see in many flight websites to book the tickets, or email with some automatic filter for emails for you. Audio and video tag, very interesting. Many people have been using them for different stuff, but it's just so you don't have to use any plugin to have multimedia content, and it's natively implemented by the browser, so you only have to put an audio tag or video tag to have both things available. These controls here are by default rendered by the browser if you put the controls attribute, but if you don't put the controls attribute, these controls won't be shown, and only you can control the audio and video through some buttons or any player that you built with JavaScript and CSS. So here, for instance, we're showing this video of Google Chrome. Let's see if it loads. Maybe we lost connection. Don't you think? Maybe we lost connection. Let me see. Oh, should work then. Okay, it's working. I was just thinking. There are some attributes like autobuffer to pre-render the content or load the content as soon as you load the page. For some reason now, I don't know, your laptop is acting funny.
That's not a surprise.
Yeah. Well, okay, so this laptop is kind of... But the same way that we control the video from JavaScript, the good thing here is that this video element now, unless what we've seen so far with Flash or other things, now you can style it directly from CSS. For instance, here I'm going to use an attribute called WebKit because it's kind of experimental as well, WebKitBox reflect, and just saying temp, I think it's below 10 pixels. Yeah. So what it's doing is like adding a reflection like Apple does in their website, but we don't need anything else than just saying the style, and it's going to render the reflection of the video for us.
I think it's probably still buffering.
Yeah, but it's acting weird. So the canvas tag, how many people here have heard of the canvas tag? Okay, that's a lot. More than other places that I've asked before. This is because the canvas tag has been around for at least 2 years now, and people have been doing a lot of cool stuff, mainly because we have, like, in a single canvas tag and through some methods, place to render graphics, pixel-based, and then it's as simple as getting the element, in this case canvas, and this would be the HTML code, the only HTML code that we need. The canvas tag is here. So through JavaScript, once we get the element, we call a method getContext, and then we set the context 2D, two dimensions, and then we have a bunch of methods to draw rectangles, and then draw also lines. So this very simple example here, what you see is not an image. It's something rendered from JavaScript. But really, you can push the boundaries here. For instance, there's a demo here. Let me see if it works. Okay. This is using Canvas to render also render images, and through some Canvas methods and listeners that you apply through normal JavaScript, since we're talking of a normal HTML document, you can start modifying these pictures. And just think that so far rotating an image wasn't possible with the image tag and JavaScript unless you use a very weird hack. So now with Canvas you can do all this crazy stuff, and also has some methods if you want to export the content to an image. Now, this thing is not interactive anymore. It just grabbed what we had in the canvas tag and exported to an image. But things went further, and many people were asking for 3D support. So now what it's in an experimental stage, and you didn't run the tag. I think we should run the... Yeah. We're going to restart the browser because some of these things need a flag.
I'm gonna do it when you talk about it.
As it's experimental. So what happened here is that I don't know if you programmed anything with OpenGL format before, syntax, and then what WebGL is like porting this OpenGL syntax to the browser. So what we have inside the same canvas tag, once we get the context, you'll see that the syntax will be slightly different. Instead of saying that it's a 2D context, it will be a 3D context, and we'll have then a bunch of methods to render things in 3D. So what you'll have is, like, without the need of any plugin, a context to render and program things to show in 3 dimensions. I don't know if we have it.
Take a second.
Yeah.
It's a big presentation.
Perfect. Oh, what happened with the text?
It's downloading the font.
I see. So this thing here also is rendering without any plugin. It just, as you see, the context once we get the same canvas element that we showed before for 2 dimensions, the only difference is that we're saying that it's experimental WebGL, and the methods here change a little bit, and with a little bit more complex programming, we can set camera effects, light effects, and also mouse interactions, although in this demo we're not interacting with it. It's doing all of it automatically. But people are starting to create, if you look on the net on the internet for WebGL, you'll start seeing a lot of cool demos that people are building with it. So that's all about the HTML part. What I'm going to show next is the CSS, mainly CSS3 features. So as we said, with the syntax notation, with the CSS notation that I mentioned before with the JavaScript selector, these are also supported in CSS, and they have been for a while in the standard. The only difference is that now browsers are starting to support them more and more consistently. So things like, the sibling selector here, or the parent selector, or first child, you can use it. At least in Chrome, it's going to work for you. Here, for instance, also when you want to paint rows like white and gray, and alternate the colors. I remember that I had to do that before with JavaScript and some logic. Now you can use this CSS notation, and it will work automatically for you. So the whole presentation here is not using any of the 8 fonts that we have available, like Arial, Verdana, or Georgia, or any of the fonts that we know that we have been using for the last years on the web. Now, with the support of the font face syntax, we can import any OTF font and use it like we're doing in this presentation, and think that it's a big jump for web designers. They don't have to use image replacements or things like that anymore, and we're passing from 8 available fonts to thousands that will be available in this OTF format. There are a bunch of text effects, and actually in the last, we were at the University of Madrid, and after we showed these features, some people were actually adding these effects to their extensions, and we could see at the presentations that people did really cool stuff with text effects, rounded corners, and things that we'll see now with CSS. For instance, this syntax, what it's doing is when we wrap the text and something doesn't fit in the width of the container, these dots are added automatically for us, only just changing this property. And what we're doing here is just with this slider and JavaScript changing the width so you can see how this thing works. Again, here for layout, in JavaScript I'm changing the CSS property, but this is all done with CSS automatically. That only changing how many columns our container has. It's wrapping the text automatically for us and setting the columns that we want. We have also text stroke. So if you're building something that maybe has subtitles or you want to make it more visible, obviously not with these colors, but you may want to use white and black as a stroke. But you can set that automatically with CSS. You'll see that some of the features have the WebKit word. Here is because these features are new, are in experimental stage. But you might find the same feature with the MOZ word for Mozilla or O for Opera. But as we'll see later with rounded corners, for instance, this word disappears as soon as the feature gets into the standard and it's supported across browsers. Here for opacity, for instance, we don't need any of this key that I was talking about. The only thing is that the new notation, instead of using for color the hash and the hexadecimal notation, we are using RGBA, being the 4th parameter, the opacity. But the advantage of that is that we can set 2 opacities into the same element, something that wasn't possible before. So we're setting an opacity for the text and an opacity for the background, and both of them are independent. Also, another notation for the color, we have the HSLA that you might be familiar if you used Photoshop before. So you are changing here, for instance, with this 3rd parameter, we're changing the luminous, the light of the element. And what I was talking about before for the rounded corners, as you see, the CSS property, it's just border radius. It started as -WebKit border radius, but now it's being in the standard and supported across browsers, so it doesn't need that anymore. And as you can see, as I'm changing the pixels here, the corners of this div are changing as well. And I'm sure that you have seen many techniques on the internet to do that through JavaScript and hacks and HTML features. Now it's not needed anymore, so only with CSS you can do that. The same for gradients, both linear and gradient and radial gradient. So we can see here how it changes. Shadows as well. And if we mix all these features together, we can come up with a 2.0 Web 2.0 logo creator that we're going to do in less than 10 seconds. So we will put some shadow to the logo. We add some gradient in the background, some rounded corners, and my favorite, like the reflection. So we have a 2.0 logo only changing CSS features, CSS properties of the element. Some extra features here with the background. Just this now when we resize this image, because we change the background size to this property, the image is changing with it as well. And then now we have here some features that also are very interesting. This one for transitions, you have been seeing this feature actually in the presentation, because when we are going from one slide to the next, we're using this CSS property. But here I'm going to show how it works with the code. We have a box here, and this is CSS syntax that you are probably familiar. And the only thing that we're saying is that when this element has class left, then it stays with margin 0. And when it has class right, it is going to have a margin left of 1,000 pixels. So we're going to change the class of the element not through HTML, but through JavaScript. So we're getting grabbing the element, and then changing the class name property. So when it's left, it's 0, no problem. And when it's right, it's going to the other side. What we're doing here in the second section, it's just preserving the same syntax, but we are adding this property, transition, and we're saying that when margin left changes, do it in 1 second and with this effect. So now when I'm changing with JavaScript the class name, so the browser is doing the transition for us automatically, and only because we specified this CSS property. That was for transitions, but we also have transforms. And this is just to use some methods to rotate, scale, and translate. That, for instance, here we say that when we hover the element, this hover property, we've seen it in many links. Now we're applying it to this box here. And when we hover, it's rotating 5 degrees the element for us, something that also it was impossible before without hacks and things like that. And even we can zoom scale the whole presentation if we push 3. We don't have the code here, but what this thing is doing is scaling the whole page. And also we have animations. Very cool, but also very dangerous, because I don't know if you guys remember the blink tag. It was an HTML tag that it was very annoying for doing things blinking on the page. So I hope that when you use this, you use it better than even better than this example of pulse. So, but what we want to show here is that there's a notation to define some keyframes, and in each keyframe we set some properties like opacity. Like, for instance, initially it won't have any opacity, but then it will have the full of it at the end. And some properties like the duration, if you want this thing to be infinite, like this thing is doing here. So all these properties now also handled from CSS. So that's pretty much about it, about CSS as well. We have text effects, visual effects, and what we've seen last, the transitions, transforms, and animations. You can the main goal here was to show you that so you can use it in the extensions, but you can use it as well in modern browsers that are starting to support more and more of these features. And obviously, mobile browsers, which, because people change their mobile more often than their desktop computer, it's more likely that you have one of the last browsers on your cell phone. And also the advantage is that the smartphones, like the Google phone, the Nexus, or the iPhone, all of them have browsers that are WebKit-based, and that's good for us because they are going to support also all these features. Not important for us for this presentation, but just I'm going to mention that if you want to see all these features in Internet Explorer, you only need a plugin. And the same way that let's say that to watch videos in YouTube, you use the Flash plugin, and you install the Flash plugin at some point. So here's the same. You install the Chrome Frame plugin, and you'll have all these features running in IE. And if you're a web developer, it's very easy to add support for this Chrome Frame in your page when you only add this meta tag in your website, and that will tell whoever is accessing to your website with Internet Explorer is going to tell him that this page can render with the Chrome Frame plugin. And you can set it both on the client side, changing this code. But if you don't want to change the code of your website, you can also set a header on the server side, and then that will be it, all that you need to do to support Chrome Frame in your page. And just to summarize, it's just to remember that HTML5, it doesn't mean a specific version of HTML anymore. We're just saying like a generic word to get to enclose together all the new features in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And actually, as this title says, it's like the next generation features for modern web development. So the main goal here is to have fun and build cool stuff without any pain. Now I'm going to pass the microphone to Arne, who's going to show you the features and the interesting parallels of Chrome extensions. Just take some notes because later you're going to use them, and we're going to see the cool stuff that is being done with that.
Just like Ernest's presentation, my presentation is a Chrome extension. So, or like his was an HTML5 website, mine is a Chrome extension. So I'll just go to my extensions page. I'll turn off what I have here. And what I'm just doing is I'm installing a development version of my presentation. So, I'm going to click my page action. Going to click my slides. Good. So let's get started then. I'll just click this and okay, let's talk about Google Chrome extensions. How many of you have written an extension? Not many. Awesome. This is great. No, this is perfect. I get to give you all new information then. But how many of you know what an extension is? Do you have extensions installed, let's say? Yeah, okay. So basically you all know that a Chrome extension, very easy to install. You just saw me do one kind of in the development way. But let's talk about what it is. And the way I like to think about it is that it makes Chrome a better browser for a smaller set of users. So for example, not every user of Chrome needs to deliver a presentation about Chrome extensions. I do, though. And so I wrote a Chrome extension to make my life easier. And the reason I do this is because obviously this presentation can't be part of Chrome for everybody, but it can be a part of Chrome for some people, and for those people, it's very important. Something else, for example, is I use an extension to check stackoverflow.com. I don't know if you know stackoverflow.com. Does anyone use it? Okay, so a few. It's like a programming forum, but you get points. And because I love points, like I love getting points, I check it a lot. But the thing is, you only get points if you answer a question first. So, or best, let's say. And if you answer the question best, someone will give you points. So I need to see when questions come in so that I can answer them quickly and get more points. And I wrote an extension to check to see if there's any questions I can answer. So those are just some examples of how Chrome can make the browser better for a specific audience. And so when you're writing an extension, you should think, who can use some extra bit of functionality that isn't part of Chrome today? So it makes the browser better. It uses HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So if you've ever written a Firefox extension, maybe you know this technology called XUL, Zool. It sounds really weird. It's also really hard to learn, and it's annoying. This is just a website. A Chrome extension is basically the same technology you would use to make a website about, lolcats. We also have a gallery. The gallery has over 3,600 extensions, so there's a lot of good examples of stuff you can do with the API. I encourage all of you to check it out if you haven't. Also, note that lately we just translated the gallery, so it should be available in Czech. In fact, yeah, it's available in every language Chrome supports. So what's really cool about the translated version of the gallery is it'll highlight extensions that are targeting the Czech Republic or whatever location you have set to. So if you log in, you'll actually see extensions that make more sense to you, depending on your language. As a developer, this is great because you can actually target to users of Chrome wherever you're writing, and then they're more likely to see your extension and use it. So it's easy to get adoption, even though there's a lot of extensions in there. They're easy to install. So, if I actually just click in to an extension, you actually see a little prompt like this from the gallery. It says, it has access to your browsing history and private data on google.com. This is an important little bit of text because what we do when we write an extension is we make the extension say what it does and where it gets data from. So in terms of letting people know what an extension does up front is very important, but we also do it in a very easy-to-understand way. We don't really give you too many things. We also don't show any, we don't not show anything, if that makes sense. Kind of like a Firefox extension can actually do anything it wants to your browser. Chrome extensions have limited permissions that you have to declare to show what they can do. And then that's kind of represents here. So the user decides, do they trust this extension, yes or no? And they click yes, and they have this functionality. Extensions are very easy to update. So if you use Chrome, a lot of you do, you see that it updates in the background automatically. And there's 3 channels. There's the stable channel, the beta channel, the dev channel. Hopefully you're on the dev channel if you're writing extensions, because that lets you try out the new interesting features before most users get to them. By the time that stable channel gets updated, it's usually about 3 months after a feature's been put into the dev channel, up to 3 months. So what extensions let you do then is take advantage of Chrome's ability to update in the background. So if you go into the gallery, after you've published your extension, you upload a new version, it'll be updated to all of your users right away the next time their Chrome checks for an update. And they won't get a prompt unless you change your permissions. And that's really good because if you have something you want to fix or new features you want to add, you don't have this thing where you open up your browser and it asks you, hey, would you like to update these 5 extensions? Because when I open up my browser, I want to use my browser. I don't want to sit there and update for an hour. So let's talk about writing an extension. Like I said, Chrome extensions are a technology you already know. It's HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Very simple, not much else. We basically want to make it like writing a website. Except it's really cool because the website itself only has to run in one browser. So if you've ever written anything that needs to run on Firefox, needs to run on Internet Explorer, which is so painful, and Chrome, you understand that you use things like jQuery, you use hacks to make the CSS look right. And the great thing about extensions is it's all in Chrome. No other browser supports Chrome extensions right now, we hope. and basically, you can just target, if it looks good in Chrome, it looks good to all of your users. And you also get to use all the HTML5 stuff that Ernest talked about. So there are some things that it's different from a website. So for example, there's a few things that web pages can't do. Mess with your bookmarks. Not mess with them. Just read your bookmarks. Or, for example, while websites can open up a new pop-up window, most browsers block them, but Chrome extensions can actually open, close windows, move them around, open, close tabs, and do some other cool stuff too. So we have a simple JavaScript API. The API kind of looks like, let me grab it. Looks like this. It looks like Chrome and then whatever API you want. So history, right? History, and then your functions kind of go here. So that's the JavaScript API. It's very simple. We'll cover it later. So how do you start writing one? Well, again, I'll walk you guys who are staying around for the hackathon through this later on. But it's basically based off of a manifest file. And this is just JSON. So we don't have to learn XML to write a Chrome extension. You do have to know JSON, but it's fairly easy. It's just keys and values. And then you can see that this one actually has a very simple name. It has a version, so version 1.0. And every time you update in the gallery, you just add one to that. Description, so simple. And then a few more things, like permissions and icons, that kind of thing. To develop, I kind of showed this to you before, but basically you go to Chrome:extensions in your browser. There's other ways. If you're on Mac, for example, if you go to View, if you go to Window Extensions, you'll actually see that same page. And then what you do is you click this Developer Mode tab here. And you'll get the chance to load an unpacked extension. So if you had a directory now with one of these manifest files ready somewhere, you could go to that directory, choose it, and then the extension would be installed, just like my presentation was installed before. So what kind of stuff can we do, right? What kind of views does an extension have? Because we talked about, a little bit about what it can do, but how does the user see your extension? And to answer that question, there's 3 main views that you can use. The first one is called a browser action. It's a little rectangular icon up in the top right of the browser. It's pretty small. It's 19 pixels. So if you have Photoshop or something, start making your icons 19 pixels. And you can see here, here's the browser action for my extension. It's really simple, not much to it. I'm not really that good of a designer. I like orange, so. Yeah, so it's basically an icon. Cool. But the great thing about it is you can use the Chrome API to change the icon. So you can actually change it to show different states in your extension. One of the extensions I like to use is LastPass. And every time it has an update, it kind of spins the icon. So I wanted to see how hard is it to really do that. If you were writing GIFs, if you were changing it to each frame as an image, it would be pretty hard. You'd have to go into Photoshop, make like 50 icons, that kind of thing. It kind of sucks. So the Chrome guys who wrote this functionality knew that this is actually something they wanted to support, so they actually let you put canvas data into an icon. So for example, this took me about 5 minutes to write. Here's a canvas right here. Don't look at this when I click this button. Let me get. Yep. Sorry. Don't look at this. Look up here. Okay. I can't really zoom in and click the button at the same time because I'm really bad at designing slides that work. So just look up here when I click the button. Here we go. And there you go. That's nice. And that's just canvas. It just spins around. I'll see if I can. No, I can't get it. Okay. Well, so you can see you can change the icon. If you have an iPhone, you can actually. You probably know this kind of design that there's an icon and then there's a little piece of text if there's something to do in that application. For example, like an unread email count. So say you have 12 unread emails and your Chrome extension checks the emails that you're getting. Well, you can actually set this badge text, and you'll see it up here. There's 12, and it's overlaid right on top of the icon. And you don't have to draw it, so it's a lot easier than having to change the icon or draw on canvas. And you can also change this, what we call the badge, to a different color. So here's blue. Here's green. And you can also animate it at the same time, your icon in the background, just to show people, hey, there's something going on here. And keep spinning. Don't spin it all the time, please. I just like doing it. So I'll just clear that. So the icon can be pretty dynamic. And there's another place for an icon, too. We call it the page action. And it's inside of this bar here, what we call the omnibar. The omnibar, oh, wait, I should probably. You can actually just see it right there. There's another one. As you can see, I got extremely creative with my icons here. It's actually the same one. But the cool thing about it is you can hide it and show it based off of the page that you're on. So for example, on this slide it's here. On that slide it's not there. So I only set it to show up on one slide in my presentation. One note, I am cheating a little bit here. These are actually two extensions. You can only have one of these icons at a time. So you have to choose. There's a lot of people who complain about this, and we may change it in the future. But the idea is that a Chrome extension does something very simple and very straightforward. So if you need to use both of these, you might need to rethink your extension or just release two extensions so that users can choose, do they want both bits of functionality or do they only want one? And to just talk about what the difference is conceptually between a browser action and page action, they're both silly icons. Use a browser action when you want a button always on. So for example, something like a notifier that tells you that there's stuff you can do in the background. Like my Stack Overflow extension, which I talked about before, is a great example of this. It's always on, so if there's new Stack Overflow stuff, I can click a button and see it. The page action you should only use on certain pages. A great example of a page action extension is the RSS implementation. So Chrome doesn't actually have an RSS icon when you go to a page that has RSS. Like most browsers do, Chrome doesn't. But we do have an extension that does this. And if you install the extension, it actually checks the page itself, sees if it can see a feed, RSS feed, Atom feed, and then it gives you a link. It displays the page action if it finds one. And if it finds one, then you can actually click it and then subscribe to the feed. What's the next big thing, right? So these icons are great. They're tiny, but they kind of don't give a lot of options for UI. So we have the pop-up, which actually is a pop-up that shows up when you specify one. You can actually click the icon, and then the pop-up will show up. So for example, here's my pop-up. Very simple. Uses HTML5 fonts, by the way. So that's not a standard font. It's just one that's bundled in my extension. And it just gives you some room that you can do any sort of HTML stuff. So if you want to have controls, if you want to display data, if you want to have animations, if you want to put lolcats in there, you can do whatever you want. It's HTML. This also works on the page action itself. So just to talk again about what's available, you have three main views, the browser action, page action, and then the pop-up window. So when you're designing your extension later on, think about these views and how you can use them to make what you want. There is one more view. I kind of lied a bit. And that's the page itself. So I talked about the RSS icon is able to go and read DOM of the page to determine if there's RSS feeds in there. Well, what the content scripts, what you can do in an extension is actually read and modify DOM of the page. So for example, what we call these scripts are content scripts. So I'll just click this. You can see I really like orange. So I'm changing the background of the page for a few seconds, and then I'm changing it back. And what this shows you is that you can actually use the page itself as a surface for your extension. What we have is people who write extensions that change Google search results to show images next to the search results, do other things like that too. One note, content script cannot access the JavaScript of a page. The reason for this is security, basically. So there's stuff that a content script can do that a normal web page couldn't do. And so we have to put a security barrier in there, or else the web page JavaScript could actually run code that could make your browser do stuff you don't want it to. So you can read and write DOM, because DOM's fairly safe. It's just kind of textual kind of content, but not JavaScript. If you do need to read JavaScript from the page, though, there are some ways you can do it, but you actually have to basically write a script tag into the page using DOM. Just something to keep in mind. If you want to do something like this, come and see me later, and I'll show you how to do it. The content script does have limited access to all the Chrome APIs also. So basically, you can't do the things I was talking about, like open up a new window directly from a content script. Extensions can make cross-domain XML HTTP calls. So for example, an extension could fetch stuff from Twitter, fetch stuff from Google, fetch stuff from CNN. What a content script can't make that call, though. So you might be asking, what's the use of this content script if it's limited and it can only talk to DOM and do things like that? Well, I'll talk a little bit about a background page. So the background page kind of makes the content script really useful, because the background page can do actions on behalf of the content script and then pass data back and forth. So we'll just talk a little bit about, you can think about the background page like it's the brains of your extension. So it's really just telling the parts of your extension what to do. So for example, it can open up new windows, like I was talking about. So you can see that here. It can talk to the pop-up. So the pop-up can communicate directly with the background page. You can actually have the pop-up when it runs, fetch data that's stored in the background page, and then display it. So the great thing about this is the background page runs the entire time that the browser is open. So when you put it into your extension is installed, and the user opens up the extension, the background page runs, and it does everything. It can just stay running for as long as the browser's open. The great thing about this is you can use window.set timeout to keep running scripts in the background every 5 minutes or something like that. My Stack Overflow extension that fetches data just keeps checking Stack Overflow every 10 minutes, stores the data that it gets in the background page, and then when the pop-up page is opened, it asks for that data, which it then returns. So the pop-up page renders really quickly because the background page is doing all the work. And then finally, the background page can send messages to the content script. So just to talk a little bit more about security, there are actually 3 security zones. So you can think about it like this way when you're designing your extension. The page itself doesn't have any access to Chrome-specific APIs. It can just do normal HTML stuff. The content script, if you run a content script inside of that page, it can only access stuff in Chrome.extension APIs. And it actually can't access everything. It can only really send messages. And then the background page and pop-up, and any other page that you have in your extension, like this presentation, for example, has full access, can do anything. And there's a few methods that you would use to pass data back and forth. So the first is Chrome extension send request. Just a function that you would use to pass a message from the content script to the background page. When I do the hackathon, I'll show you how to use this function, but basically what you pass is JSON back and forth. Then between a pop-up or any other page, you can get a handle to the background page by calling chrome.extension.getBackgroundPage. And what this does is actually gives you a JavaScript object that is the window for the background page. So for example, if you know window.console.log, which is a logging functionality in Chrome, you can actually log to the background page's console from the pop-up window by calling this function, and then what returns is the window for the background page, so you can call console.log on that. And I'll show you all of that too. So just for those of you who want to go home, think about this stuff, and then maybe write an extension later, this is the URL for our documentation. This is where we have samples, tutorials, also the API reference. So really easy to find stuff there. And then we are working on making a lot of samples kind of visible on that site so that you'll be able to look at code and then figure out how to do something. So let's put it all together. Let's make a virtual extension first, and then I'll show you how to make it for real later. What I'm going to build is a Twitter trend fetcher. I'll just install it here. The funny thing is this extension is part of my extension, which is really weird, but it works. So it's like an extension inside of an extension. It's like one of those Russian nesting dolls. So I'm going to install this extension. Again, you can see it has access to my data on multiple websites. So I'll install. You get a notice that it's installed. Oops, sorry. And then what you can do now is go to news.google.com, which is the news site I like to use. And then what it does is you can see this new blue bar up top that wasn't there before. And that's my Chrome extension that's going to Twitter. It's basically fetching data from Twitter and then injecting it into news.google.com. Seems like kind of weird, but I kind of like it because all these articles here are maybe 2 hours, 6 hours ago. This one's 22 minutes ago. I think that's the newest one on the page. But this stuff right here is what people are talking about right now on Twitter. And for the most part, right now, it's all just garbage. But sometimes it's interesting because you get to see what stories are breaking right now or what people are talking about. So I'll close that. And then we'll talk about the manifest that we use. So there's just some bits here. We'll go over all this too later, so don't feel like you need to write this down. We have a permission, so I'm hitting the Twitter search API. So I have to declare that. That's how it knows that I'm fetching data from multiple websites. Then I have a background page, background.html, and that's the brains of my extension. So that's running in the background the entire time. It doesn't need to, but what it does is it actually listens for requests from the content script, and then in response to those requests, goes and fetches data from Twitter. And then I have a content script, and this is the syntax that we use to say, this should only run on news.google.com. A little bit more about that. So when the content script is actually when the browser's deciding whether or not it should install the content script, you basically have a match pattern. So what I'm saying is all I want to match is anything that starts with news.google.com, anything after that. So of course, looking at when I'm opening websites, if I open google.com, the browser says, well, that's not news.google.com, so I won't do anything. CNN.com, again, not the same thing. But if I open up news.google.com, it inserts the content script right away, and then that code executes when that page is done loading. So what does that content script look like? Well, there's a whole big block of text, and this is all kind of just unimportant stuff. You don't need to really know what it does. It basically just draws that blue box. What is important, though, is that call to that function that I talked about before, chrome.extension.sendRequest. And what it sends is just a JSON payload, just some action fetch, and then it specifies a callback that gets called. And so what happens when that gets called? It actually just sends that JSON payload directly to my background script. Not very much else that it needs to do. So then the background script, when I load it, it adds a listener to this chrome.extension on request. And that's the way that you listen for messages. So I could have other pages in my extension, put in listeners, but really the background page is the one that I really care about. So it's adding a listener, and whenever that message gets passed, it does this. It looks for the structure of the JSON payload I wrote. So if you see request.action equals fetch, you'll just see this is what I passed right here. And then what it does is it makes a XML HTTP request. So for any of you who have ever actually tried to write one of these, it's been ages for me. I just use jQuery because for Internet Explorer, you have to fall back and use some, what is it, ActiveX, garbage. It's annoying. So this is actually the first time I wrote a XML HTTP request by hand in a long time. It's pretty fun. No, it wasn't. It's just lame. Sorry. So what it does is it fetches Twitter's URL. And when it comes back with a positive response, it just parses the data and then calls this callback with the data. And then you can see the callback that gets called is this onText function that draws the data. Okay. So in case you need a diagram just to see what happens, so you have the content script sends the fetch to the background page, and then the background page goes to twitter.com, gets the data, returns, and then it forwards the data onto the content script. You can see the content script, when it gets the data, draws the blue box and says what topics are available. So that's the structure of a Chrome extension. It's very simple, but it puts some nice, useful functionality into there. And what we'll do later on, after I'm done with this presentation and after we get some food and coffee and stuff, I'll show you how to build this step by step. And then finally, what are some other stuff that you can do? So from last time I presented in Spain. People want to do options pages. Well, like Ernest presented before, we have HTML5's local storage. And local storage is cool because it lets you just write a key into the storage. It stays there for as long as the browser profile is there. And then it lets you read it out pretty simply, too. So basically, you add in a value into there. And now I'm reloading my presentation. It's really hard to tell because it loads really quickly because it's locally. But you can see that the value stays the same. This is something else. So if you need to store a value in your extension, then you would use local storage to do that. And you just write keys, values. Override pages. So for example, if you use the new tab page, that's yet another surface that you can use in your extension. Basically, what we let you do is replace that new tab page with anything else you want, with any HTML page. So I wrote one for this extension. It's right here. Oops. Oh. Okay. So I wrote one for this extension. It's pretty boring, but I really want someone to do something interesting here. I keep wanting someone to build a lolcat extension, to put a lolcat of the day up on my new tab page. Maybe some other interesting stuff. Maybe if you made a game, I want Pong in my browser, because I'm always on this page. Not this one, the default one. I could use something else. What else? You can do themes. So we won't really talk about how to write a theme, but just know that you can use them, and they're actually pretty cool. So if I install this, this is actually Robot Theme. It's not officially Android, but it's made by a guy in our team who works for Android. The funny thing about this, and I really like talking about this, is this is my name. Oops. So this is my name. And the guy who wrote this, it's not a very common name, but his name is Roomann-Kurrik. So it's like my doppelganger, he's my evil twin. So, and he makes Android themes, so that's pretty cool. I'm going to just install this for a second, and while it's downloading. So themes can actually make your browser look a little bit different. This one I find pretty cool, and it's technically an extension. It's packaged the same way, but you use a few different things. So we have that documented on code.google.com. What I'll do is actually disable my extension because he has a cool new tab page. So disable this, and then install, and then you can see it's pretty cool. It's a nice, attractive theme. If you like Android, like I do, you can use it. So let's enable the presentation again and start it up. One thing you might notice is that I'm actually changing the pop-up depending on what page is currently loaded. So on the presentation, it shows you the demo. But if I'm on any other page, you can actually click this, and then it's Start Presentation. So you can actually use the pop-up page to find out what page is loaded and then display stuff as you need to. So just go back to where I was. Should probably have a link to that. Okay. So let's talk about some of the cooler stuff that an extension can do. For example, I can manipulate windows. So you see here the call to open a window. Very easy. Most of the API looks like this. It's just a JavaScript object. You have five different parameters you have to pass it. Here, in this case, it's just the size of the window and the position, and then what URL you want to open up. So if I click open, oh, shoot. I'll just wait for it to go away. Okay, zoomed in, sorry. I'll click open. You can see I just created 3 windows, and I'm going to close them in a second, too. In fact, they're closed. So you can manipulate windows. You can move them around. You can animate them if you want. If you can think of something interesting to do with that, that's pretty cool. Maybe a test extension to do would be to grab all of the tabs in every open window and move them into one single window, because it's a pretty useful functionality to do. You can do bookmarks. So for example, you can see what bookmarks the user has installed in the system. The really cool thing about bookmarks is that, yes. So you can actually see here are some bookmarks that I have saved on my computer. Thankfully, I deleted all my porn before presenting. Yeah, that's good. And basically, what you can do is the bookmarks get synced, right? If the user of Chrome is actually logged into bookmark sync, bookmarks are shared between each Chrome instance. So some clever bastard thought, hey, a bookmark is just text. Why don't I store JSON in there? And then have that synced between all of my accounts. And that actually worked. So until we have a sync API, which I think we will, you can actually store data in a bookmark and then fetch it from your extension later, so that if you want to sync options or settings, it's kind of an interesting hack. It's not officially supported, but it's pretty cool. Here's another cool one. So if you need to, we kind of put this in to let extension developers create new tab kind of functionality. So if you want to reopen a closed tab, but you're not really sure which tab you're looking for, but you know what it looks like, we can let developers take screenshots of pages that are open and then save those in a canvas element. So for example, hello, Brno. So just to prove that I'm not faking this at all, I'm going to click render. And then you can see there's actually a screenshot of the page itself that I put into an image element on the page. This API kind of gives you a string of data that can be, it's what we call a data URI. It's kind of a new way to do inline image data. You can put it as the source for an image element. What you can do is also put it into a canvas element. And that's really cool when you start doing things like resizing, rotating, or doing any sort of canvas drawing on top of this screenshot. So you can make it smaller, keep a thumbnail of it, or something like that. And then if you want to have fun, you can just see it go, kind of keep going forever, down. So taking screenshots of the page is kind of cool. Later on, some functionality that we're going to be planning for this is, right now it's only the current active page, but doing things like opening up or taking a shot of the entire page, not just the view, or taking a shot of a page that might not be open would be kind of cool to do too. Let's talk about new features, because I'm on that topic too. So we have Chrome, which updates really quickly. And we have these developers who are trying to put all this cool functionality in. And new functionality that we're not really sure about, that we have to hide behind a flag. So when you run Chrome, we actually have what we call experimental extensions. And again, all of this is on code.google.com, so you don't need to write it down. But if you run Chrome with this flag and you put experimental in the manifest file that I was talking about before, you can have access to some experimental features. And to give you an idea of how fast this changes, when I came to Europe, I think, a week and a half ago, these were the only 2 things that we had in there, processes and history. Processes lets you kind of find out about the threads that are running in Chrome and check that out. History is your browsing history, so you can go and see what pages the user has opened and do things like reopen old tabs or find something that maybe the user's looking for. But to give you an idea of how fast these things change, is in a week and a half, we already have 2 more experimental APIs. We have a context menu, which is actually, you can right-click. So, for example, if I wanted to add something to this menu here, you can do that. And what else do we have? We have clipboard stuff. So you can actually do clipboard stuff like copy and paste. Now, you won't be able to submit an extension which uses an experimental API into the gallery. The gallery actually checks for this permission and will reject it. But the great thing about it is we move very quickly, so they should be out of experimental pretty soon. And this is the time that we're looking for feedback. So if you write an extension today, just for the hackathon or whatever, and you find something cool, but you want the API to change slightly, let us know, and then we can change it right now very easily. And we're always like looking for people's feedback on this kind of thing. So we'll do the coding thing. Let me do some demos of experimental stuff because I wrote a few just to show you. So let me go to the extensions page. So just a few more demos that haven't been put into this presentation yet are, let's see, go to my workspace, grow extensions. So, sorry, I forgot. I need to run with this experimental API. So if I do, so this is just a copy of Chrome that I downloaded. This is a nightly. So if you actually go to this URL, you might need to know. If you need a new version of Chrome, something that's like a day old, as opposed to maybe a week old or a month old, you can go to this URL, and I'll just write it down here. This is actually pretty cool. So, and I'll put this in the notes, actually. You know what, I'll just put it in the notes for the hackathon. So, but build.chromium.org/buildbot/snapshots will actually let you download a version of Chrome. So I downloaded one yesterday, or 2 days ago. I think it was yesterday. I've lost track of time. And basically what it gives you is a very new version of Chromium that was built yesterday. And now I'm going to start it with Chrome. So I'll just show you the command line that I use. So this is just the path to the executable. And then this is the flag that I'm launching with. So enable experimental extension APIs. And then I'll run this file. There's a lot of build-up for this payoff. Chrome extension. And now I'll load my extension. So for example, let's do copy-paste first. So what we have is a feature called Clipboard. And what Clipboard lets you do is go to a website. I like Twitter. Just go see what we have here. And now I can take text on the page. Oops. And then click this, click copy. And then go into the Twitter bar. Click here, click paste. You can see I copied and pasted text right out of the page. So you do have access to the clipboard functionality in extensions. That's in experimental. And what else? Chrome extensions. This is the cool one, the context menu. So basically, if I go to news.google.com, now you can see I will actually right-click, and you'll see here, I'm a context menu item active on links. And what I did was my extension just put in an extra menu item, and then it said it's disabled for everything that's not a link. So I can actually go, and I'll just click on this one, right-click again. And you see here, I have a context menu. And now I can select it. And what it does is just notifies my background page, and the background page sends an alert. You clicked on a context menu. Okay. So pretty simple. You can actually get a little bit more data about the stuff in the page that you clicked on, like the text if it's selected, that kind of thing. But hopefully, you'll be able to use that soon without the flags so that your extensions can maybe have menus and things like that. So that does it for the demo. And I guess we'll take a little break. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, but I think we can probably start, if people want to start taking food and have coffee. Yeah.
Question?
Yeah, sure.
Is there a way how multiple extensions may interact?
Yeah, good. The question is, can multiple extensions interact? And that message passing call that I mentioned before, the Chrome extension send message, it's a good example. So, this actually can send data to another extension. So if your extension is listening for requests from other extensions, you have to kind of set up your listener a little bit differently. You can pass data between two separate extensions. So that's cool. But the thing is, actually, just to note, that's the only way, because extensions run in their own process. So there's a security barrier between them, too. Yeah?
Is there a way of writing native code extensions for Chrome?
Is there a way of writing native code extensions for Chrome? I guess by native code you mean like C++ or something? Yeah. So we have an API called MP API. It's the same one that Firefox uses. It's kind of how plugins like Flash get installed in Chrome. Extensions can use MP API plugins inside of there. And that's basically just a DLL.
Is it possible to access the DOM from these kind of extensions?
Yeah. You can. I think you have to do some message passing. Basically, you need some JavaScript code that passes the DOM elements to the MP API plugin, which is just a DLL. So you write that in C. There's an API. We don't really document it because it's more of a Mozilla thing that we just support.
So basically it works the same way as in Mozilla?
Yeah. They should be compatible. Same thing. We also have a project called the Native Client. It's on code.google.com/p/native client. If you search for native client, you'll find it. And native client is really cool because it lets you take C code, compile it into an executable that runs in Chrome, hopefully with as part of an executable in Chrome that will just work. So it's very fast. It's all C code. It's going to be a little bit better than MP API because the APIs are a little bit better, and we can sandbox it. So we can trust the code that's running in there because it can't do anything bad. But that's still kind of in development. It's not really fully released yet. Okay. Cool. Any other questions? Back there.
I have a question concerning the local storage.
Yeah.
If I save some value under some key,
yeah.
do I have any way to prevent like some other web page for rewriting this value?
Yeah, good question.
Namespaces or something?
Yeah. The question was about local storage. Can other websites rewrite it, or can you prevent that? Local storage is actually scoped to the current page, kind of like the same way that a cookie would be scoped. So if your extension writes one in its background page, nobody else can write that. If you're writing a content script, I believe it actually gets saved into the local storage of the page itself. So I think if you wanted to store something from a content script, the best way to do it is pass a message back to your background page and have the background page store that. It's a good question because I didn't really cover that. Yeah, so you can use simple short keys. You don't have to namespace or anything like that. Anything else? Cool. Let's break. I guess just people help yourselves. Just come down here, and then I'll get set up for the extension hackathon, and we'll write that Twitter extension kind of step by step.